Well, hello, Facebook friends and family. It is a great opportunity to be able to see you here on this day, this seventh day in this new year of 2026, as we are going through and we are continuing in our journey of through the book of Proverbs. We have been going through, and we're going to continue on this journey as we're traveling through each and every day of this month and experiencing a chapter of Proverbs at a time. And today we're going to continue on in that manner as we read through Proverbs chapter 7. We'll be reading it according to the English Standard Version, and we're going to be reading it in its entirety. But before we do get started with that, we're going to go ahead and get some things situated here. Just talk about some things and pertaining to Proverbs. And I'm just trying to pull up a couple of things on my screen here. All right. And so let us take a look here at some of the things that Proverbs does have to offer unto us for today on Proverbs chapter 7. One of the things before we do get started, as you know, I do like to try to give you some additional detailed information for your own personal study time and things and related to that, so that as you go through and you study throughout the book, that you will have sufficient information and revelation about what is taking place here. And so here today, we're going to spend a little bit more time. We talked about this before, but we're going to look at the overall purpose and relevance of the book of Proverbs. The purpose of Proverbs is simply this: it is a book that is and it's not just a collection of wise sayings, but it is a practical guide for living in alignment with God's order. Hey, hold up, wait a minute. I recently told this story, and I'll tell it again. When I think about alignment, it always reminds me of my vehicle and how the wheels are my wheels aligned the right way. I may have the steering wheel, and I needed to go straight, but if I'm starting to hold the steering wheel off to the side or off to one side, it means that one of my wheels, at least one of my wheels, is unaligned. Why? Because then I'm using that force to turn the wheel one way just so it can keep straight. And if we are unaligned with God's order, it is simply, it may feel like that in God's kingdom, that we feel this friction where things are just not on that straight and narrow as it should. Hold on, let's continue to move on forward. It's the purpose of this book can be summarized in several key points. One, it is to teach wisdom and instruction. If we're going to be aligned in God's order, we must have wisdom and instruction. And Proverbs aim to impart understanding, to impart discernment, and to impart moral insight. This wisdom, it is the skill to live rightly in God's world. And so if we're going to have the right alignment with God's order, we got to have the right skills to live right. But hold up, secondly, here, this is something else that's going to help us to live in alignment with God's order. It is to form, this book is used to form character and righteousness. Knowledge alone is insufficient. And Proverbs links learning with behavior. It connects those two things in together, learning and behavior. And it addresses the heart. It addresses the attitudes. It addresses the choices that shape our lives. But then not only those two things, but thirdly, it gives us a guard against sin and folly. If we're going to live in alignment with in God's order, we must have some burials, some guards, and some guidelines around and against sin and folly. And Proverbs often contrast wisdom and folly, showing consequences for wrong paths. It helps us to be able to see as it functions as a preventative guide for both individuals and for communities. There's two more things that I want to be able to point out here. And also this proverb, one of the overall arching themes or principles or purposes that it was written for, I should say. The purpose is to equip us for daily life. If we are going to be aligned in God's order, we must be equipped for daily lives. And Proverbs moves from even dealing with from finances all the way to dealing with relationships. And not only just those two, but all the way with dealing with speech. And even more beyond that, even having work ethics. Proverbs provides applied principles for real life situations. And then hold up, wait a minute. Another purpose is for it. The purpose of the book of Proverbs is to promote the fear of the Lord. If we're going to be aligned with God's order, we must have the fear of the Lord. And this recurring theme is that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And true wisdom starts with reverence and submission to God, not merely human intellect. And so why these proverbs matter today? I'm so glad you asked. Because in a world where we really in a world of competing wisdoms, that means what I mean here is this circular culture, the social media, and human philosophies. They often redefine what is right and redefine what is successful. But Proverbs remind us that ultimate wisdom is rooted in God, not in convenience or in trends. Secondly, why these Proverbs matter today? Because wisdom protects against consequences. Many challenges today, financial stress, relational conflict, moral compromise, have roots in poor choices. And Proverbs equips us to avoid unnecessary pains by showing patterns of folly and their results. Thirdly, here it is, another reason or why Proverbs even matter today. How can something written so many hundreds of years ago matter so much today? Why? Because it shapes character in a distracted age. While we live in a world of instant gratification, or like how I like to call it, in this microwave world, where we have information overload, and the patience is gone. Um, but reflective instructions of Proverbs, it counters these impulsive livings. Fourthly, the reason why Proverbs matter for us today is because it builds generational legacy. Proverbs emphasize teaching the next generation, shaping families and communities in a godly culture. Proverbs matter today because wisdom never ages. It trains hearts and it trains minds for life under God's guidance. Let me just focus that there. All right. And so as we began to look at reading Proverbs 7, here it is. What is that big idea? If I could say it, Proverbs 7 shows us a warning against the path of temptation. If I could pull it in a big idea, it would simply say Proverbs 7 illustrates how temptation works and how wisdom protects us from it. What is the temptation? It is a cautionary chapter. Or should I put it like this? Hold on. Let me rephrase that just so you're not confused on what I just said here. Proverbs 7 illustrates how temptation works and how wisdom protects us from temptation. Proverbs 7 is a cautionary chapter showing that sin is often seductive, it is often deceptive, and it is also destructive. And that ignoring instruction, it has its own consequences. Now, let's look at the structure and the flow of these verses before we read them. We can look at verses 1 through 5, and we'll see that there is a call to guard wisdom. The chapter, it begins with a father urging his son to internalize wisdom and cherish instruction. And obedience is the first defense against all sorts of enticements. These verses, it shows memorizing and meditating on wisdom is like wearing a protective garment against danger. And then secondly, verses 6 through 23, it deals with the seduction of the folly. A vivid narrative describes a young man being led astray by an immoral woman. Look, here are some of the key things in there. Her speech is so smooth and it is persuasive. Her actions are calculated and they are tempting. And the young man is unprepared, having ignored instruction. The narrative demonstrates the process of temptation. It appeals to the attraction. Then there's this engagement, and then it leads to this eventual ruin. But then not only that, we also hear of the consequences of ignoring wisdom. In verses 24 through 27, as it talks about the father concludes, I shall say, with a warning to avoid the path of the immoral. He gives this warning that folly leads to death and ruin and not fulfillment. And he allows us to be able to see that wisdom is proactive. It teaches prevention over reaction. And so we can see here these themes of wisdom as a defense, that internalized wisdom acts as an armor. It keeps the heart and the mind aligned with God. And secondly, temptation is strategic. Temptation is strategic and it is subtle. Sin often appears attractive. Well, as I like to say, it always overpromises, and its consequences are always hidden. And we see the importance of instruction as the story emphasizes the role of teaching and discipline before temptation arises. And it also shows us moral responsibility as the young man's downfall is avoidable. He could have applied his father's instructions. We also see this covenantal perspective that sexual sin violates God's design, causing relational, spiritual, and personal destruction. And as we think about these things today, we know that temptation is everywhere. On digital media, we deal with it in relationships, we deal with it with a culture that is consistently offering alluring but destructive paths. But we know that wisdom protects, knowing that God principles ahead of time will prevent us from going towards disaster. And it's relevant to us because obedience is proactive. We cannot wait until temptation strikes. We must internalize God's instruction today before the temptation comes. This is important for us today because teaching and mentoring matters. Just as the Father's voice guided the Son, godly guidance today is vital for families and communities. And I could just simply wrap it up like this. Wisdom isn't optional. It's a daily shield that keeps us from paths that look appealing but end in ruin. So let us read Proverbs chapter 7. At this time, we'll be reading this according to the English Standard Version, also known as the ESV. And it says, "My son, keep my words and treasure up my commandments with you. Keep my commandments and live. Keep my keep my teaching as the apple of your eye. Bind them on your fingers. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Say to wisdom, you are my sister, and call insight your intimate friend. To keep from the forbidden woman, the adulteress with her smooth words. For at the window of my house, I have looked out through my lattice and have seen among the simple. I have perceived among the youth a young man lacking sense, passing along the street near her corner, taking the road to her house. In the twilight, in the evening, at the time of night and darkness. And behold, the woman meets him, dressed as a prostitute, wildly of heart. She is loud and wayward. Her feet do not stay at home. Now in the street, now in the market, and at every corner, she lies in wait. She seizes him and kisses him. And with bold face, she says to him, I have to offer sacrifices. And today I have paid my vows. So now I have come out to meet you, to seek you eagerly. I have found you. I have spread my couch with coverings, my colored linen from Egyptian linen. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let us take our fill of love till morning. Let us delight ourselves with love. For my husband, he is not at home. He has gone on a long journey. He took a bag of money with him, and at full moon, he will come home. With much seduction, with much seductive speech, she persuades him. With her smooth talk, she compels him. All at once, he follows her as an ox goes to the slaughter, or as a stag is caught fast, till an arrow pierces its liver, as a bird rushes into a snare. He does not know that it will cost him his life. And now, O sons, listen to me. Be attentive to the words of my mouth. Let not your heart turn aside to her ways. Do not stray into her paths. For many a victim she has laid low, and all her slain are a mighty throng. Her house is the way to Sheol, going down to the chambers of death. That concludes our reading of Proverbs chapter 7. We have read it in its entirety, as it is comprised of 27 verses, and we have read them from the ESV, also known as the English Standard Version. If I could leave you with one line and one thought, it will simply say, sin seduces, but wisdom protects. Heed instruction before temptation finds you. Now, you'll be back with me tomorrow as we'll read through Proverbs chapter 8. We'll have a same introduction of some sort, and we'll be ready to continue on our journey. But for now, may the Lord bless you, and may the Lord keep you. That is my humble prayer.